Hello, my friends. Today I am starting to read How Not to Die by Michael Greger, MD, FACLM, founder of nutritionfacts.org with Gene Stone. How Not to Die. Preface. It all started with my grandmother. I was only a kid when the doctors sent her home in a wheelchair to die. Diagnosed with end-stage heart disease, she had already had so many bypass operations that the surgeons essentially ran out of plumbing. The scarring from each open heart surgery had made the next more difficult until they finally ran out of options. Confined to a wheelchair with crushing chest pain, her doctors told her there was nothing else they could do. Her life was over at age 65. I think what sparks many kids to want to become doctors when they grow up is watching a beloved relative become ill or even die. But for me, it was watching my grandmother get better. Soon after she was discharged from the hospital to spend her last days at home, a segment aired on 60 Minutes about Nathan Pritikin, Pritikin, an early lifestyle medicine pioneer who had been gaining a reputation for reversing terminal heart disease. He had just opened a new center in California, and my grandmother, in desperation, somehow made the cross-country trek to become one of his first patients. Its first patients, sorry. This was a live-in program where everyone was placed on a plant-based diet and then started on a graded exercise regimen. They wheeled my grandmother in, and she walked out. I'll never forget that. She was even featured in Pritikin's biography, Pritikin, the Man Who Healed America's Heart. My grandma was described as one of the death's door people. From Greger from North Miami, Florida, arrived. This is a quote. Francis Greger from North Miami, Florida, arrived in Santa Barbara as one of Pritikin's early sessions in a wheelchair. Mrs. Greger had heart disease, angina, and claudication. Her condition was so bad she could no longer walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she was not only out of her wheelchair, but was walking 10 miles a day. When I was a kid, end quote. When I was a kid, that was all that mattered. I got to play with Grandma again, but over the years I grew to understand the significance of what had happened. At that time, the medical profession didn't even think it was possible to reverse heart disease. Drugs were given to try to slow the progression. Surgery was performed to circumvent clogged arteries to try to relieve symptoms. But the disease was expected to get worse and worse until you died. Now, however, we know that as soon as we stop eating an artery-clogging diet, our bodies can start healing themselves, in many cases opening up arteries without drugs or surgery. My grandmother was given her medical death sentence at age 65. Thanks to a healthy diet and lifestyle, she was able to enjoy another 31 years on this earth with her 6 grandchildren. The woman who was once told by doctors she only had weeks to live didn't die until she was 96 years old. Her near miraculous recovery not only inspired one of those grandkids to pursue a career in medicine, but granted her enough healthy years to see him graduate from medical school. By the time I became a doctor, giants like Dean Ornish, MD, president and founder of the nonprofit Preventive Medicine Research Institute, had already proven beyond the shadow of a doubt what Pritikin had shown to be true. Using the latest high-tech advances, cardiac PET scans, quantitative coronary arteriography, and radionuclide ventriculography, Dr. Ornish and his colleagues showed that the lowest tech approach, diet and lifestyle, can undeniably reverse heart disease, our leading killer. Dr. Ornish and his colleagues' studies were published in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, yet medical practice hardly changed. Why? Why were doctors still prescribing drugs and using roto-rooter type procedures to just treat the symptoms of heart disease and to try to forestall what they chose to believe was the inevitable, an early death? This was my wake-up call. I opened my eyes to the depressing fact that there are other forces at work in medicine besides science. The U.S. healthcare system runs on a fee-for-service model in which doctors get paid for the pills and procedures they prescribe, rewarding quantity over quality. We don't get reimbursed for time spent counseling our patients about the benefit of healthy eating. If doctors were instead paid for performance, there would be a financial incentive to treat the lifestyle causes of disease. Until the model of reimbursement changes, I don't expect great change in medical care or medical education. Only a quarter of medical schools appear to offer a single dedicated course on nutrition. During my first interview for medical school at Cornell University, I remember the interviewer emphatically stating nutrition is superfluous to human health, and he was a pediatrician. I knew I was in for a long road ahead. Come to think of it, I think the only medical professional who ever asked me about a family member's diet was our veterinarian. I was honored to be accepted by 19 medical schools. I chose Tufts because they boasted the most nutrition training, 21 hours worth, although this was still less than 1% of the curriculum. During my medical training, I was offered countless steak dinners and fancy perks by Big Pharma representatives, but not once did I get a call from Big Broccoli. There is a reason you hear about the latest drugs on television. Huge corporate budgets drive their promotion. The same reason you'll probably never see a commercial for sweet potatoes is the same reason breakthroughs on the power of food to affect your health and longevity may never make it to the public. There's little profit motive. In medical school, even with our paltry 21 hours of nutrition training, there was no mention of using diet to treat chronic disease, let alone reverse it. I was only aware of this body of work because of my family's personal story. The question that haunted me during the training of this was this: if the cure to our number one killer could get lost down the rabbit hole, what else might be buried in the medical literature? I made it my life's mission to find out. Most of my years in Boston were spent scouring the dusty stacks in the basement of Harvard's Countway Library. Most of my years in Boston were spent scouring the dusty stacks in the basement of Harvard's Countway Library of Medicine. I started practicing medicine, but no matter how many patients I saw in the clinic every day, even when I was able to change the lives of entire families at a time, I knew it was just a drop in the bucket. So I went on the road. With the help of the American Medical Student Association, my goal was to speak at every medical school in the country every 2 years to influence entire generations of new doctors. I didn't want another doctor to graduate without this tool, the power of food, in her or his toolbox. If my grandma didn't have to die from heart disease, perhaps no one's grandparent did. There were periods where I was giving 40 talks a month. I'd roll into town to give a breakfast talk at a Rotary Club, give a presentation at the medical school over lunch, and then speak to a community group in the evening. I was living out of my car, one key on my keychain. I ended up giving more than 1,000 presentations around the world. Not surprisingly, life on the road was not sustainable. I lost a marriage over it. With more speaking requests than I could accept, I started putting all my annual research findings into a DVD series, Latest in Clinical Nutrition. It's hard to believe it's almost up to volume 30. Every penny I receive from those DVDs, then and now, goes directly to charity, as does the money from my speaking engagements and book sales, including the book you're reading now. As corrupting an influence as money is in medicine, it appears to me even worse in the field of nutrition, where it seems everyone has his or her own brand of snake oil supplement or wonder gadget. Dogmas are entrenched and data too often cherry-picked to support preconceived notions. The light's not very good over here. Just a moment, please. Let's see if that helps. As corrupting an influence as money is in medicine, it appeared to me even worse in the field of nutrition, where it seems everyone has his or her own brand of snake oil supplement or wonder gadget. Dogmas are entrenched and data too often cherry-picked to support preconceived notions. True, I have biases of my own to rein in. Although my original motivation was health, over the years I've grown into quite the animal lover. 3 cats and a dog run our household, and I've spent much of my professional life proudly serving the Humane Society of the United States as the charity's public health director. So like many people, I care about the welfare of the animals we eat, but first and foremost, I am a physician. My primary duty has always been to care for my patients, to accurately provide the best available balance of evidence. In the clinic, I could reach hundreds, on the road, thousands, but this life or death information needed to reach millions. Enter Jesse Roche, a Canadian philanthropist who shared my vision of making evidence-based nutrition freely accessible and available to all. The foundation he and his wife Julie set up put all my work online. Thus, nutritionfacts.org was born. I can now reach more people while working from home in my pajamas than I ever could when I was traveling the world. Now a self-sustaining nonprofit organization itself, nutritionfacts.org has more than 1,000 bite-sized videos on nearly every conceivable nutrition topic. And I post new videos and articles every day. Everything on the website is free for all time. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorships. It's just a labor of love. When I started this work more than a decade ago, I thought the answer was to train the trainers, educate the profession. But with the democratization of information, doctors no longer hold a monopoly as gatekeepers of knowledge about health. When it comes to safe, simple lifestyle prescriptions, I'm realizing it may be more effective to empower individuals directly. In a recent national survey of doctor office visits, only about 1 in 5 smokers were told to quit. Just as you don't have to wait for your physician to tell you to stop smoking, you don't have to wait to start eating healthier. Then, together we can show my medical colleagues the true power of healthy living. Today, I live within biking distance of a National Library of Medicine, the largest medical library in the world. Last year alone, there were more than 24,000 papers published in the medical literature on nutrition, and I now have a team of researchers, a wonderful staff, and an army of volunteers who help me dig through these mountains of new information. This book is not just another platform through which I can share my findings, but a long awaited opportunity to share practical advice about how to put this life changing, life saving science into practice in our daily lives. I think my grandma would be proud. And that is the end of the preface. Tomorrow we will do the introduction, and altogether this book has, let me see, looks like 15, nope, sorry. It has a part 1 and a part 2. Part 1 has 15 chapters, and part 2 looks like it is about recipes, the daily dozen, and conclusions and acknowledgments and such. So I will at least be reading the 15 chapters of part 1, and then I will look into what's going on in part 2 with regards to Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen: beans, berries, other fruits, cruciferous vegetables, greens, other vegetables, flax seeds, nuts, seeds, herbs and herbs and spices, whole grains, beverages, exercise, and conclusion. Yeah, if they're not labeled as chapters, but part 1 includes the following chapters: how not to die from heart disease, how not to die from lung disease, how not to die from brain disease, how not to die from digestive cancers, how not to die from infections, how not to die from diabetes, how not to die from high blood pressure, how not to die from liver disease, how not to die from blood cancers, how not to die from kidney disease, how not to die from breast cancer, how not to die from suicidal depression, how not to die from prostate cancer, how not to die from Parkinson's disease, how not to die from iatrogenic causes. I'm not even sure what that means, so I hope he explains it. I look forward to reading to you, my friends, and I look forward to this journey to learn more and better ourselves. And if you've got comments or questions or anything, please don't hesitate to comment below. I will keep an eye on that at least once a week. I haven't been getting much in the way of, but I do check once a week, um, at least when I post these. All right. I hope you all have a fabulous evening, and I hope this brings you great joy. Thank you. Bye-bye.